Hi, my name is Kamil, and I'm going to do a little tech talk about automation and how is it our company and how it helped solve problems, how it helped in our everyday workflow. Automation. For whom is automation? My background is primarily with backend development, system administration, that sort of stuff. So I'm going to give a lot of practical examples about how we solved problems for DevOps, IT, and such. But I think automation is also for anyone who can write code. If you know any programming language, if you can script, that's something to get you started. But there are also tools for mere mortals that allow you to automate everyday tasks, some common problems, etc. How do we automate things? Some of the tools of choice for our team, for our company, were Ansible, Docker, Hubert. So I'm going to talk a bit about those. But also, you should never feel constrained in your research. You should try other things, see what works for you, see what doesn't. So whatever else you see fit. Why automate things? Simple, because we love being lazy. We're humans. We don't like wasting time. We like when somebody else does the difficult job. So automation allows us to do the extra work first and then be lazy forever after. Many things around us are already automated. Like think a light switch. You just flick a light switch and the light bulb goes on. You don't need to find wood. You don't need to maintain the fire. It's just there. So the things that we really need automated are usually the things that that are not, because everything else already is. Engineer. Many of you are engineers, and if not, then you probably work with engineers and all sorts of IT companies, etc. What kind of a person is an engineer? An engineer, there's this silly definition. It's a person that takes 3 hours and takes a 2-hour task and turns it into a 1-hour task. So theoretically, you reap benefits until the universe dies, or until things break mysteriously. A friend of mine used to say, if it's worth doing twice, it's worth automating it. Well, except when it's not. Turns out a lot of the times, simple things or very complex things don't make sense if you try automating them. You just waste time because a problem is not easily solved by automation. So it's good to know when to back off and to stop trying. So when is it a good idea to automate things? Anything that's repetitive, something from my day job, like creating, deleting user accounts, rotating passwords, upgrading vulnerable software packages, tweaking config files on all the servers all the time. It gets repetitive very, very soon, very quickly. Anything that's daunting, for example, like go through all of the email groups and delete the groups that have no members. It's easy when you have 10 groups, like on G Suite or something like that, but it gets difficult when you have on the order of 500. Migrating data from some old service to a new one. At our company, we've switched services from between various providers to look for something better, something cheaper, something working better so many times that at this point, like if we're considering switching to a new service and it doesn't allow an import and export option, it's basically off the list. And low-hanging fruit. So you don't need to tackle the most difficult problems in your organization first. Maybe it's better to start with simple things. It gives you a good return on investment, and it allows you to get hooked up. Once you start automating things and seeing the benefits and saving time, you just cannot snap out of the habit. You just keep going. But what if something cannot be automated? That's usually a difficult problem when something cannot be automated, but a lot of the times it can be solved by delegating it to someone else. Maybe they're knows the domain better or has more experience with using a particular tool. Maybe they can do that for you. And maybe it shouldn't be a decision made by a machine. Maybe it shouldn't be a scripted decision, but maybe you should let a person choose what exactly happens, but automate everything else. Maybe instead of sitting there with a button and doing something, maybe you can give that button to someone else, and maybe they can trigger the action. Lastly, if delegating fails, it's always a good idea to think about the problem like a bit outside of the box. Maybe the process just sucks. Maybe you should talk to your fellow humans about what can be changed about the process to make it less painful or less manual or less time-consuming. A little bit about automation for DevOps. I understand automation for DevOps is something like where developers and system administrators are working together. DevOps is a buzzword, so I think it's worth clarifying. One of the classical problems in managing server configuration, when you have a lot of servers, it's a bit of a problem. I used to be a developer, suddenly turned sysadmin, wasn't really ready for that. And heard that the entire company's web hosting and server infrastructure, I don't know, 30, 40 servers, I have no idea how much exactly was there, because it was a time of chaos. Something new popped up every week or two. Nothing was documented. Everything was done by hand. Every server was unique. Every server was special. If things broke, nobody probably would have any idea how to fix them. It was not a good situation. I started an inventory in a spreadsheet just to have like a single pane of glass where I can look at the things and see what's going on. So like it had columns for what's the name of the machine, what's the IP address, what's the location, provider, did I manage to log into the machine, do we have root access, who's paying the bill, etc. But it turned out it doesn't really scale. And more importantly, it's not machine readable. I cannot take a spreadsheet in its raw form and instruct the machine to try to log into all of the servers and see if they respond. So our first attempt at automating it was with Ansible. It's a server and configuration management tool. It's pretty easy to pick up, but it gets a little bit hairy once you try the more advanced stuff. So I installed it, recreated the inventory from the spreadsheet into the format that Ansible can ingest, simple ini file. And it turns out I can ping all of the hosts with just a single command. It's amazing. I got hooked up, committed it into Git, and started automating everything. We kept the repository private, even though there's a lot of valuable code there. A lot of it's reusable. Like I think things that we've automated are done the best way possible, with no shortcuts. We're doing the right thing, but also a lot of it is tied very deeply into our infrastructure. So basically, we cannot just publish it. It would be great to publish it one day, though. So 2 years, 1,800 commits, 300 pull requests, and 8 contributors later. How do we use it? What can it do? Second, I think I stopped screen sharing. Okay, back to the presentation. So it can provision the base system for you. Again, you just select which projects, and then it's gonna automatically contact and to which host it should operate on. Again, we have the Kittens project. We want to deploy it. The only thing that changes between our projects, all of them are automated in the same way. It's just the name of the playbook. Again, we give it an argument saying like which environment is it live, is it staging, is it development, is it anything else, and that's it. The project is deployed, and all of them deploy the same. Just the name of the playbook changes. You can update the DNS zones, like edit a file, choose some domain names, etc. Run the playbook. It's updated. Say a person left the company. Just add their name to a list of revoked keys, revoked accounts, run a playbook, and all of the servers are cleaned up. So we've seen how the playbooks look from the outside, but how do they look like inside? This is an example. I kind of copy-pasted it from our repository, cleaned up a little bit. What does it do? It installs Docker. This is the part that actually installs Docker. It's still for like, I don't know, clean Docker version, I don't know, create this directory, add this apt source, fetch this key, or you have to reload systemd, you have to refresh something, you have to restart something. Come on, it's a lot of work. It doesn't have to be so complex. It's a simple problem, right? No. We spend a lot of time refining this, and turns out simply installing an application with a one-liner simply doesn't cut it at times. So is Ansible good or bad? Is it by doing things by hand? Oh, definitely. I will never ever want to go back to doing things by hand. It's simply counterproductive. Is it better than piping from curl to sudo bash? Yes, if I ever find you doing that, I'll kill you, I promise. Is it better than shell script? Or worse? Well, shell scripts are definitely much less verbose. Installing things is simpler. Like, we already know them. They're like, shell is one of the most terse languages we have. But shell also does not define the final state. This is what Ansible does. It defines the final state that your system should be at once the playbook has finished running. Shell scripts don't do that. You have to write a lot of conditionals, ifs, checks, look before you leaps, before you can make sure that running the same thing twice does not end up in a mess. Is it better than any of the other million tools that do similar things? Maybe. We haven't tried all of those tools. We did our research, but we kind of stuck with Ansible. It was our first real try. And at this point, we've invested so much in it that switching to something else would be very difficult. Is it better than creating something in-house, rolling it by hand? We're not sure. Maybe. We know the limitations of Ansible now. We think we know how we could make a better Ansible, but is it worth the effort? So, is your automation efficient? We have one to create a server, we have another to install the base system, we have another to install the application, we have another to deploy the code. But it turns out when you run them all in succession, it gets slow. Sometimes like provisioning the whole system, like from scratch to a working application took something like 2 hours. So if you had to wait for the 2 hours and you're provisioning like 10 servers, of course it makes sense, because I don't think you can set up 10 servers by hand in 2 hours. I think it would make sense to start something from scratch and try to automate it in 2 hours rather than doing it by hand. But if it's just one box, as it was most of the time, then you kind of feel maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe we should just do it by hand. Maybe it's faster if I do it by hand. So we avoided using it. Solution? For us, it was to create a base image that already included all of the base system, like Nginx, SSL, Python, security hardening, all that sort of stuff, our SSH keys, and just deploy different applications on top of that. First, we tried Packer from HashiCorp. Then it had some annoying bugs. It was very difficult to debug. Every time it didn't integrate with Ansible really well. Every time it encountered a bug and it would just destroy the instance, making it very difficult to actually log in and see what went wrong. And then rerun 1.5 hours again. Pretty tiresome. Our book, and turns out it works. So we had a more specific tool. like a domain-specific tool, and we had a more general purpose tool, and it turns out that general purpose tool worked better for us than a domain-specific tool for that specific problem. But maybe there are better tools that do those things. We haven't tried a lot of those. Like the landscape is pretty big. There's Chef, Puppet, there's Fabric, there's Terraform, there's a whole lot of other things that do similar kind of stuff. We didn't have time to try all of them. So some takeaways. No automation is the worst. Definitely don't try having no automation. As soon as you start automating things, you can see benefits. Like look for the low-hanging fruit, and once you pick some, you will see that time has been saved. But with the automation is slow, doesn't really make things any better than having no automation, because you're not doing anything, but still things don't take less time. But buggy automation is even worse than slow automation, because with slow automation, you can at least go and have lunch or do something else. But with buggy automation, you have to keep fixing it and pulling your hair. So avoid solutions that create more problems. If a solution does not work, maybe it's worth to invest a little bit of time, but you have to be smart about when to back off. And finally, do your research. Some tool will work for you, some will not. Sometimes a more general purpose tool is better than a single purpose tool. But not always. More problems. So we've been talking about this kittens project. If you have 1 or 2 or 3 projects, it's fine. But what if you are a company like mine that has dozens of projects every year, and each of them slightly different, and each of them has some more crazy stuff? Well, of course, we don't want to fix by hand, but so we still try to automate everything. So we spend days writing elaborate playbooks just to set up servers for projects. Like project 1 needed this, project 2 needed that. So we spent days rewriting all of that and adjusting it for a specific project. It became very much like manual work. So why don't we try automating it? You can automate that, right? So maybe let's try delegate it. Our first attempt at delegating this responsibility was simply to ask developers to help us write the playbooks. But it turned out Ansible has a pretty steep learning curve and some serious limitations. I cannot name all of the limitations off the top of my head, but basically simple things are simple, but hard things become much more harder than you would expect them to. Seemingly simple things like managing access to credentials stored in Ansible Vault. Ansible only supports symmetrical encryption, so it means you have a shared master key for all of the encrypted secrets. So if you want to let developers see the database password, you also have to let them see the AWS root credentials, which was not good. It was difficult to achieve parity between local development, vagrants, continuous integration, stage, live, all of that, because all of those environments need little bits of tweaks. Everybody's machine is different. The vagrant setup might be different. The continuous integration environment is even more different. And it all resulted in a lot of ugly hacks in our playbooks and simply made it infeasible to continue that. Our second attempt was with Docker. You probably heard about Docker. If you didn't, it's a thing that puts applications into some sort of containers, boxes, we would say packaging tool. With Docker, some serious and magical stuff happened. Turns out many difficult problems became easy, like where to store your application's logs. We had a lot of fights with developers about that. With Docker, you just spit the logs out to standard output. There's nothing easier than that. It takes it from there. Delegates the responsibility to the sysadmin. Developers are in charge of their Docker files. They can actually write them and test them locally. And if it works locally, it's probably going to work everywhere else. Developers no longer have to wait for sysadmins to provision the machines. Like you can just start writing your Docker file on your laptop, and when it's ready to share, you share it. You don't need a virtual machine to test it. Builds are automated and reproducible. Like I'm saying 100%, but it also depends on whether you wrote the Docker file well. But the idea is that they were reproducible. It's much easier to review, audit, and understand the Docker file and the Docker setup, because Docker gives you, confines you into its worldview. There's a Docker way of doing this, there's a Docker way of doing that. So it sets out a lot of very good conventions that are easy to follow for developers. And also it means that when something breaks, we know where to look to fix it. Also, the output of running Docker is a fixed image. Like if it runs on my laptop, it's probably going to run on a cluster in production. Well, theoretically. And often in practice. So our deployment playbooks for Ansible basically became copy and paste and maybe change this, change that. And there's even work to eliminate that and simply have one playbook to deploy all of the projects, just change the project name. It's still work in progress. And we also created a bunch of base images that, again, help us solve some of the common problems. And since problems are solved in base images, developers tend to use them because they don't have to do the work twice and stick to the conventions. And when something breaks, when it follows a convention, it's easier to fix it. But it's not everything about Docker is so great. First off, it was another tool for developers to learn. And while backend developers got excited over the new toys, the frontend developers would much rather spend their time writing shaders or cool CSS hacks. We still have to occasionally help the teams to write their Docker files. The difference between what happens when the project is built and when it's run is very greatly emphasized with Docker. And sometimes if you do not understand the difference and do not keep it in mind all the time, some things can break in very mysterious ways. Many difficult problems stay difficult or become even harder. For example, we have big ongoing problems with storing and serving huge assets like 3D models, WebGL textures, 360 videos, or that sort of stuff. And with Docker, they become even more painful because it's much more difficult to do binary diffs and that sort of stuff. Like you cannot just rsync a file to the server. It's another silver bullet. We've Dockerized a lot of our infrastructure, but it turns out Docker is just for that. It's a single purpose tool. It packages applications. We still have Ansible managing all of the low-level infrastructure, like networks, computing, hardware, all that sort of stuff. So you can have Ansible from me over my dead body. Still running my own tool as a side project. More conclusions. Choose tools that empower your teammates. If a tool encourages teamwork, or at least doesn't make it very, very difficult for other people on your team to contribute, it's a better tool. You can always delegate some part of the project or of the setup to somebody else. Someone else can always fix it. And different tools are good for different types of tasks. Sometimes just because a tool can do one kind of task, doesn't mean another tool won't do it better and won't mesh, won't fit into the workflow just as well. A little bit for the IT guys, IT people, those people that fix our computers, things that are not easily automated, like purchases, finances, onboarding new people, help desk, troubleshooting, setup, wiring, all kinds of stuff in the server room. These people are often busy, and even though some of the things that they have to do are easily automated or scripted, they don't have the time to build automation. So in our sysadmins and solve our problems. Some of the problems that we solved have hundreds of groups on G Suite, formerly Google Apps. We have to review and all of the empty groups. I already mentioned that, 500 groups to go over, not fun. For the remaining groups, review membership, create list of users from outside the domain, because maybe there were some freelancers with like random Gmail or Yahoo addresses. Update everyone's email signatures. Designer made a beautiful signature, but how do you apply it to 150 people in the organization? Make sure there are no rogue MP3s on anyone's Google Drive. Turns out people sometimes share pirated songs on Google Drive, which is not cool. It counts against companies' Google Drive quota and exposes it to risk for legal action, that sort of stuff. Create a project in Jira with all the standard workflows, templates, etc. If you ever use Jira, you know how powerful it is, but also how daunting it can be to create a new project. When you have like I don't know, 20, 50, 100 new projects every year, it becomes a nightmare. And all of that regularly, like every day or month or every now and then. How we solve some of those problems? We wrote a simple in-house tool. It's a Python script that makes it easy to script interactions with G Suite. So for example, an audit of all of the groups in our organization look like this. It's a simple command that tells you how many users each group has. So we packed it into some classical standard Unix shell tools to delete all of the groups that have a user count of 0. Even though the tool is open source, beware, there's no warranty. It's still work in progress. May eat your laundry, you've been warned. Yeah, we developed a lot of other in-house automation. For example, there is an application that helps us track devices for the QA team. Like when you take a phone or a tablet or a new shiny laptop to test the latest, newest, greatest project you work on, like you check in the application, there is an NFC tag on the device. You write your name and you can have it. And if the device gets lost, you can always track the person down and chase them. And there's no way to mess up which device is which because there's an NFC tag to register in the system. Again, Jira. We turned Jira setup for a new project from about 1 hour to about 15 minutes. Still, there is some manual work because the Jira API doesn't allow automating all of the things. But 45 minutes times a lot of projects. Processing instances. We have some shared accounts on things like Amazon, Twilio, etc. Sometimes various projects use those shared accounts, and then we need to charge the client back for the resources that the projects have used from the common pool. So I have a tool that takes those invoices and splits them up by project. Very useful for IT and finance. And we have a URL sheltener. I don't think it's really useful, but we have it. We also use some third-party services. There's BetterCop, which automates a lot of the groundwork with G Suite, with Gmail, with Drive, etc. Like for example, you can use a template for a signature, and it can spit out a signature for everybody in the company and automatically update it. There are policies to audit Google Drive. If we can define what kind of behavior on Google Drive, like sharing this or that kind of file, is suspicious and get an alert or automatically correct it. And of course, user provisioning, creation, deletion, these are all pretty time-consuming tasks, and it automates a lot of that. A bit for developers, actually for everybody else, but developers get the chance to sources on GitHub, of course. It doesn't do much all by itself, but it has plenty of plugins which are easily installed from the catalog. And also, it's very easy to write your own in JavaScript and Coffee or whatever else that compiles to JavaScript. So is it internal for a whole bunch of small stuff like stand-up alarms so that the project managers don't have to chase the team. For example, we automated deployments. Like once you have a common set of playbooks for deployments, you can just let a chatbot do the work of pushing the button. And also some silly stuff like random GIFs or pack bombs. Make. Have you heard about Make? I'm quite sure you've heard about Make. It's probably older than you, 1976. It's a build tool, but it's surprisingly versatile as long as you all you need is to turn some input files into some output files. Of course, you can use it to build your project unless you have somewhere else. But surprisingly, Make works a lot of times. Some of the other stuff we used it for was to maintain a git ignore file in a project so that it always stays up to date with whatever components we've chosen or whatever components we're adding. And you can use it personally, for example, to synchronize your .files and configuration and little scripts between machines. Like if you work on one machine at home and another one in the office, Git and Make can help you maintain the differences in your setups. Oh, and this very presentation was made with a little bit of help from Make. It's just 2 lines, but it works. Automation is really for everyone. Sometimes creating sophisticated automation requires like engineering skills, a deep understanding of the problem domain. You have to maintain it, etc., etc. But not all of the tools need to be this sophisticated. Sometimes a simple timer switch that you plug into the wall can do a lot for you. Of course, like if a lot of people have the same problem, there is a potential for a company to try to enter the market, automate things for us. So, for example, there is a tool called AutoHotkey for Windows that allows you to bind all sorts of actions and remap keys on your keyboard. Like basically, if you find yourself clicking and clicking around a lot, doing one repetitive task, AutoHotkey might be able to script that for you. I already mentioned the BetterCloud, which is I would say automation service kind of tool for managing the first thing everyone else did that. Slack, which are simple off-the-shelf automation tools. Hit me up on email or on Slack or wherever else.